Welcome to the Mystical Truths Podcast. This is Rebecca, and I'm really glad you're here. Let's unlock your world. In this episode, I'll be talking with Tansy Brucker. Tansy has studied some tarot with me. She recently attended the Intuition Development Series I taught on Zoom. She's smart, she's curious, and she's one of my favorite humans. So I'm happy to have her on the show. And it sounds like I just sold you into like a dating show. That's sort of like an intro to a dating show. And Tansy is single right now. If anyone, welcome to the show.
Keep me in mind. Thank you. What an introduction.
So you have some questions. You have some things on your mind.
I have a lot. Yeah, I do. I feel like every time I talk to you, it's there's a lot of interesting topics and conversations every time. And what you say always sticks with me. And then, of course, I think about it, and then I have like, wait a second, is this how this works? Or I always, think of more questions. I think right now with this time of year, I have a few questions about, like, I was raised Catholic, and I feel like as long as I've known you, and really just as long as I've kind of like transitioned into like the more adult phase of my life, of this conflict of, being Catholic, believing in God, like just religious, and then being spiritual and, kind of using more of like a logical thinking of like science-based and evidence-based thinking, and, obviously talking with you and having, just like the universe and like greater intelligence. And I always feel so conflicted. And then especially being a parent, with Bryson, of like, I was raised Catholic, I'm raising him Catholic, I'm sending him to CCD. It's our favorite time of year. It's Lent, so we're not eating meat on Fridays. And I feel like with God, okay, we believe God, we believe in greater intelligence, we believe in the universe planting this, and then it leads into all those other stuff like tarot. So it's like, if you wanted to believe in both, could there be a way like God doing things? I did some tarot with you. It's super interesting. I love it. It's a way to get some guidance. And, being Catholic, like my mom, it's like, those are so bad, devil, bad, voodoo, bad juju, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, one, I agree with you where there's no evil, there's no devil, there's no anything to be scared of, especially, with these like taboo topics for like some of the religious people. But could it be, it's like, well, we want to believe that God's doing this. Well, could God be the one that those cards, like that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or with crystals, like God made crystals. If God made the universe, if God made Earth, then God made crystals. So maybe if this amethyst makes you calm, couldn't God have made this amethyst knowing that it could help calm people?
Well, it's really funny that people could think otherwise, because if we truly believe that Source or God or whatever word we want to give that created and is creating everything that we know of, how could that be otherwise? If God creates a crystal, there's purpose to it. And there's
Right.
variety that's created because we want to have different interests. We want to have different desires. If we all came here and did the same thing and wanted the same thing, how could eternity be eternal? We'd be thinking the same things. There would be no new stuff thought up or done. And my brother used to have a T-shirt. He's very smart. And when we were, I don't know, maybe teenagers, maybe a little younger, he had this T-shirt that said, "I refuse to have a battle of the wits with an unarmed person." Mm-hmm. And I loved that because I thought that really makes sense, especially like with tarot, what you just said about tarot. How can anybody that has never studied tarot truly talk about it and have an opinion about it? Because if you really study tarot, you would find out there's nothing bad in it. It's all just teachings of how life works, the motions that we go through in life. There's no bad cards in the deck. It's a really wonderful way to learn how life unfolds and how we can navigate and utilize the guidance that's available to us. But if somebody just hears from their church or whatever that tarot is bad, well, they just assume that must be true. And
Right.
especially in the Catholic religion, because fear is injected early. It's taught deeply.
Hmm.
Just like I know your dad hasn't been to church for a long time, but he still cannot bring himself to eat meat on Friday during Lent because it's so
Absolutely.
grained into him. Every religion has really good stuff at its core, but if we're being honest and we really look at it, they've taken the good idea and put control and fear and crap all over it.
Hmm.
And oftentimes we start conditioning children very young. I remember somebody saying he was like in second grade when the nuns came in or whatever and started talking about the devil and hell, and it just traumatized him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a grown adult. I'm 30 years old, and I mean, as long as I've known you, I've been so interested, like I've said, like the tarot and just the spiritual, just understanding how the world works, and like you said, just like eternal life and all these beautiful, beautiful things. And my first question had to be God because, like you said, like my mom, first of all, extremely Catholic, CCD teacher, the whole nine. I'm There's still this part of me that is actually traumatized, petrified, whatever word you want to use, scared
Sure.
that, like, what if there is a God? What if I go to hell for not believing? And then I have to try to, like, almost like trick my brain into, like, well, yeah, like tarot's fine. There's nothing bad in it. And, God is leading it. Or these crystals are cool. And, well, God must have made it. And I still have to find a way to, like, bring God into it because I'm so scared of, like, what if, what if I'm wrong? What if there is a hell and I go there because, I did like, I did tarot cards or I did this or I did, like, there's this fear there and I can't seem to shake it no matter how old I get, which is kind of crazy to say out loud, but
Hmm.
definitely what I find myself doing, even like subconsciously sometimes.
I've met a lot of people that call themselves recovering Catholics. And what they mean by that is these things were instilled in my brain for so long, starting at an early age, I'm having a hard time untangling that. Because you get to a point where
Hmm.
you think, okay, so if God loves everyone and has created everyone, how could it be that God created crap that God now doesn't like and
Hmm.
has this one angel that's powerful enough to do things that God says you shouldn't do and hold souls when we wait a minute, God's all powerful. Well, if God's all powerful, then how's that angel getting away with that?
Hmm.
And why would God say, yes, you're bad, so sorry, you go there and I'll just forget about you? But wait, God's all loving.
Hmm.
You can see how in these teachings, people have been taught judgment. God loves everybody except
Hmm.
that person and that person and that person. God created everything except that, and that.
Hmm.
And if you do what we say and you follow the rules that we have put together, then you're going to be forever loved and adored. But if you go against any of the things that we've decided, just we've decided, because there are other groups that have decided other things that are different than what we've decided. So who's right?
Hmm.
And that's something that, early on, I was going to different churches. We were Presbyterian, but there were Catholic churches and Greek churches and Methodists all around. And so I was curious. So I would go with my friends and I would sit and I would listen and I would think, is anybody really paying attention to what they're saying here?
Hmm.
Because it doesn't really make sense. And then you go to another church and they have a similar basis, but different roles. And
Hmm.
there's 9 choirs of angels in this religion, there's 12 in this one. And I'm thinking, who is right?
Hmm.
And so early on, I really started to question what is really true here. Because we can't say there are 9 choirs or there are 12 and be correct, because those are 2 different
Right.
numbers. And we can't really say God loves everyone, but will damn those to hell. And people say things like, when somebody dies, well, God takes the good ones. That
Yeah.
didn't make any sense to me. And so
Hmm.
I thought there has to be more to this. And this is what we're experiencing now on a grander scale, is people were questioning and going, hold on a minute. what we've just been regurgitating for years, we're realizing now doesn't make sense. We have scientific proof behind the things that I'm teaching. If you go to Vatican City, you'll notice that there's not much about Jesus there. There's a whole lot of wealth and items from all different points on the planet, different religions. It's all facade. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't go along with what they feel good about in religion. If it lights up for you, if it feels good for you, by all means, that's part of your journey. But there are a lot of us that are going, we're just paying attention a little more. We're not just saying, oh, because you said, and because they've been saying for a while. I mean, if you look at the Bible, even the Bible isn't accurate. It's been rewritten and retranslated. And what happens when somebody translates something? They put their sort of take on it. This is what I believe it's supposed to say. You know, and you know that the story, if I tell you a little story and you tell somebody and you tell somebody, by the time it gets to 20 people, it's a different story. And so there have been parts of the original teachings that were taken out because people for a long time have been on this control thing, this brute mentality and control way of living. And I get where it's sort of how it evolved to that, because back in the day, a long time ago, people they wanted answers to certain things, but they weren't allowing the correct answers in. And so they were wanting to control each other. They were wanting to answer some of the deeper questions. So people just came up with some stuff, basically, and said, okay, well, we believe that there's a something God. And when people said, well, then, okay, so why do bad things happen, though? Like, why did that person's husband die and mine didn't? And they said, well, because, you know, God decides when people die. And people had questions like, why do people do bad things and what do we do about that? Oh, well, there's a devil, see? And if you do bad things, you're tempted by that devil and you're going to go live with that devil. So don't do bad things. It was a way to like kind of answer questions that they really didn't have good enough answers to while wanting to control the masses. So we can control all of these people by telling them that there's this higher power that we are connected to, that we got some answers from, and these are the rules. And this is what happens if you don't play along with this. And if you get too out of line, well, now you're damned. And it kind of sort of cleaned people up in a sense, where they thought, okay, well, we better behave and do what we're told and not go to hell, not be tempted. And this guilt was seeping in and this fear was seeping in. So now people feel guilty about, people have been made to feel guilty about money and about wealth. Don't get above your raising, they say. And so how does that really make any sense? If the church has a massive amount of money, that's okay. And you should give some of your money to the church. But don't you have a whole lot?
Yeah.
Don't you prosper? Well, some of you can. And how do we take a lot of money from the mafia and say that's okay when we know full well what they're doing? That went on for years. There are beautiful churches right around me. One down at the bottom of the hill from where I live is gorgeous, that was bankrolled by the mafia. And I'm probably getting in trouble for saying that, but everybody knows it. And so those are the things that made me question, like, okay, what are we doing? I remember a woman that I knew who was Catholic, who they all believed that, gambling was, you shouldn't gamble and stuff like that. And she was a bookie. She was a bookie. And I thought, so how does that work then? When you're at church, you don't gamble and you be a good person. But then when you're home, you could like be a bookie. And there were other people in the church that would call numbers into her. Now, I don't care if people gamble or not, but I'm just going along with what they said. How do we make these rules and then just go, well, it doesn't really apply to me or to some of us?
And I think that's where too, like, the hypocrisy of it all, like I think that's And like you said, it's just another thing that makes you open your eyes of, uh, like my my mother, who obviously once again very Catholic, she has one of her first cousins, is gay and he has a partner, and he's just overwhelmingly just a sweet person, a great guy, just kind-hearted, all of that. But we're Catholic, and he was raised Catholic, and if you ask my mom, how she feels about gay marriage or, the LGBTQIA+ community or anything like that, well, I'm Catholic, and we don't agree with that. But she loves her cousin, and if you were to say, "Well, what about your cousin?" She always has a different excuse. "Well, not him. No, not him. We're not talking about him. We're talking about." And it's like, "No, if you're talking about this community and he's a member of that community,
Yeah,
he would be included in that." But it's almost like, "No, not me. No, not my family. No, just over here, like, look over here," or, "Yes, no, we're not allowed to do this in the church, but, me doing this here." And it's just very, like you said, it's just like, this isn't lining up, this isn't adding up, this isn't making sense.
exactly. We can't really say then that, say, for example, like you said, being gay is against the church, but because I know this person and I love this person, well, it doesn't apply to them. Like, it's okay, they
Mhm.
can be gay. We just don't, we'll just
Yeah.
try not to talk about it and make a big deal out of it. Or if we want to go with that, God created and is creating everyone. So what is there this God that goes,
Mhm.
oh crap, did I make that one gay?
Yeah. Whoops.
How did I do that? Like, well, that's wrong. So try not to be gay,
Right.
okay? Just try not to do that. That doesn't even make any sense. And that's why, the things that
Right.
I've studied through the years make sense. Because the basis of even tarot or spirituality is that, yeah, there's a source of intelligence that we can't totally define or understand at this point. But we all feel it inside us that it's there. And we're a part of that. And when we connect with that, what do we feel? We feel love,
Mhm.
unconditional love, really, and
Mhm.
acceptance and everything. I've never felt anything negative. I've never felt afraid once I started learning enough to not feel afraid. So, when you connect with all of this, it's all good. It's all free
Mhm.
loving. It's you start to understand that, yeah, everybody gets to live this life however they choose to. And that's okay. And if you don't like it, don't look at it because it's none of your business. Your
Yeah.
life is your own business. So somebody, if on their journey through this life, they want to do this for a living and then do that for a living and then do that for a living and then do that for a living, people say, what's wrong with you? Can't you find something that you like and just stick with it? When all of creation is saying, sure, sample that, sample that, sample that. Isn't that fun? Look at all that variety. Just enjoy yourself. There's no
Mhm.
rule that says you have to come here and do one thing. But then there are other people that come and find something that they love to do and they do it for their whole adult life. There's no problem with that either. We get to do this any way we want to. They tell us that we're so free that we can and often do choose limitation and bondage and suffering and fear. And what fear and all of that other stuff says to me is you're not really connected with your God or your source. Because the
Mhm.
more disconnected, there's no real disconnection, but that's just the best word I can find. When we're further away from our relationship with our inner self, our inner being, all of creation, God, the more distracted we get here in this world, and in all the rules and regulations and baloney that people have thought up, the more we get involved in that and the more we get distracted by that and the less we stay connected with who we really are, the more uncomfortable it gets, the more difficult it gets. And then we start making up our own goofy rules, and then we wonder why this doesn't work out and this doesn't work out. And why do I feel uncomfortable? Why do I feel anxious? Why am I depressed? Why am I angry with people? Or why do I try to control people? People start wondering all those different things. That's why. That's why. It's a
Yeah.
very simple answer. It's not because life is happening to any of us. It's not because train wrecks happen, and what are you going to do? It's because we synchronize. We have free will. We're so free that we can come into this world of contrast and just make it painful.
You gave me a while ago a paper. What is it? It's like the emotional, is it a
Yeah.
scale where,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, to like go up to different
Yeah.
levels. And I feel like with what you're saying, with this contrast, and you wouldn't know how beautiful life was if there wasn't something to compare it to, in a sense. But I feel like sometimes that negative stuff is a lot, I want to say, like, stickier, right? Like I love your analogy, the highway,
Yeah.
when we're cruising and the left side is everything we love and it's beautiful and it's happiness and it's just everything great. And then, in that right lane, maybe it's, the stuff that makes you sad and the, things that aren't so great and things we don't necessarily like as much. And you can cruise back and forth into those lanes. But I feel like, and you've said before too, like the more you spend in that right lane, kind of the harder it is to kind of pull yourself back into that left lane. There's just more and more potholes
Mm-hmm.
and nails in the road that are giving you flat tires and this, that. And I feel like the negative stuff, it definitely is just, it's easier to stick to, right? And that was one of my questions too on, what I've been focusing with, and especially in the intuition class, it's a little different than being intuitive, but what you talked about that I've been really trying to focus on is almost like retraining my brain,
Yeah.
because I myself, I feel like I struggle with depression, I struggle with anxiety, and just saying that right there, though, like I just caught myself like I struggle with these things, and it's instead of I struggle with this, I feel like that right there, that's keeping you down, right? So it's I'm working on, I'm trying to be more positive and retraining your brain to get into that left lane.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if you had any more tips on just like I said, I feel like the negative can be so sticky, and how to kind of unstick yourselves from the bad stuff and get over to the good stuff more easily, maybe.
Well, yeah, because it's just habit. It's just a habit is a thought you keep thinking. So if you keep
Mhm,
thinking thoughts that feel better, they will become your habit. The negative stuff is just so we're so quick, we can be so quick to go for it, and then again, because it's in our face. It's usually more dramatic, and it's a habit. But the good stuff and the connection with yourself and with life is way, 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 way better, and just as habit
mhm,
forming, and can be your go-to. So what I would suggest is, instead of saying I'm trying to be more positive and I'm often in the opposite lane that I want to be in, say to yourself, I am being more positive. I'm not trying to, I am being more positive. And I don't suffer from depression and anxiety.
mhm.
Sometimes I get depressed and sometimes I have anxiety. Do you see the relief in that? When you say
Yeah, totally.
and we've been taught to use those words, I suffer from this, I suffer from that. Well, now you own it, and now you're dragging it with you everywhere you go, and you're going to keep running into it. And
Mhm,
for everybody out there, the 2-lane analogy is, I'll go just run through it quickly. And it doesn't matter which lane is the positive one and the negative one. Usually when I teach it, the right lane is the nice, happy lane, and the left lane is the crappy lane. It doesn't matter which is which. In your mind, it just has to make sense. Basically, you're born a swirling ball of energy, and you're going down this lane of life. No gas pedal, no steering wheel. What dictates where you're at on this road is what you're giving your attention to, what you believe, what you expect, what you talk about, the story you tell, all of that. So you're born in the happy lane. One side is everything you love and want, just you specifically, because that's different for all of us. The other lane is all the stuff you don't like and you don't want. Both lanes were intended to be there. We wanted both lanes. We still want both lanes. They're both useful. Neither one is truly something you shouldn't experience. But the happy lane, the good feeling lane, is the one you want to be in most often. Because you live in a world of contrast, something's going to get your attention, and at that moment, you're gliding over into the unwanted lane. So when you're in the unwanted lane, you get unwanted things. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes and the more of it you get. So the more negativity you talk about, the more you look at, even watch TV shows that are negative or scary or whatever, the more you're giving your attention to anything that could be in that lane, the more you're getting of it. Because when you put your brain on a thought for 16 to 17 seconds, something like that thought is now, another thought like it is being created, and another thought like it. And when you get to around 68 seconds, the unseeable things in your energy field are starting to move in that direction, and things are being created that equal that. 68 seconds. So, and I guarantee you, most people, when they get up in the morning, by the time they get out of bed and head to the bathroom, we'll say, they've already thought 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes of things that aren't going to help them that day. And then they just go on with it and go on with it. So they're already in the left lane or the right lane, whichever. They're in the unhappy lane, right? So when it's okay to catch yourself in that unhappy lane, the undesirables, the not wanted. Just say to yourself, oh, I'm in there. Okay. Now I know what I want to think about. Now I know the opposite or the alternative that I can think about. And so I'm just going to go ahead and think about that stuff because I can control my thoughts. Like I can think on purpose. So the more you do that, the easier it becomes and the more it becomes your new nature.
I was having a conversation with my dad. My uncle Tom had passed away, and that's his little brother. You know, he still thinks about him a lot, and you'll catch him talking about him, and then he'll bring up you, Becky, and he'll be like, you know, she doesn't get sad if anyone dies. It's a celebration. And isn't that just absurd? That I don't like that she thinks that because, you know, I miss him and I'm sad and it's almost like in that, you know, bad lane, like you said, it's like you're stuck there. And it's like he can't even think of the opposite to get over into another lane, and it's like he wants to be sad. And I tell him, I'm like, but wouldn't that, you know, what a great way to live though. And isn't that so nice? Isn't that just such a nice way to live that, you know, we think of the good things and you think about, you know, what made you happy with your brother and you think about him being happy now and you know he's not sad, you know, he's great and you know he's here and you know you can and he thinks that's absolutely ridiculous. Oh yeah, he's here. Oh, and I can talk to him. And I'm like, oh, but you can. And he's talking with you. The fact that you're even thinking about him, you know, is what I believe is him being here with you. Like you're not just randomly thinking that for no reason either, you know what I mean? Like you guys are still connected.
Mm-hmm.
And but I feel like sometimes it's just such a contract that people struggle with and it's almost like you're taught to be sad, you have to be sad. And kind of thinking the opposite of that of no, it's okay to we can celebrate. I that's one thing I admire about you the most too is like no, I celebrate life. Don't ever be sad that you know I'm not here or what this in this physical being in this physical realm. I'm not here because you know in the non-physical we're always and I can't remember exactly what you said. It's like part of us focuses in this physical part, but there's so much of us like elsewhere and we're always around and
Yeah.
it's really it's beautiful and it's happy and we shouldn't have to be sad and I try to explain that to him but
Well, you know, again, he's been conditioned, not just by the church, but by other people, that that's how we honor somebody. And it's almost like a martyr kind of a thing, where if we miss them and we're sad and we remember the good times and that makes us more sad because they're not here, we're sort of, you know, we're loving them. We're showing how much love we had. And it's not
mhm,
a conscious thing. I think it's like a background thought that it's just like a tape that runs back there. And if we would just realize, does he really think that Tommy is still alive and in spirit, wanting him to be depressed and upset and sad? Does he
right,
really think that that's what Tommy wants for him? And I know for
right,
sure if your dad had passed and Tommy was still here, or any of us, you, your brother, your dad he wouldn't do it now. So we know he certainly wouldn't do it after he passes, because we're all more in our full self at that point. None of the negativity is there. You know, your dad would be wanting joy and happiness and adventure and love for you. He would want you to go on. He would not want you to suffer because he is no longer physically here. He would not want that for you. And that's true with everybody. So how do we honor the person that we knew here, that we love? We remember the good times. We celebrate the life that they had, even if we didn't agree with all of it, even if it wasn't as pretty as it could have been, so people say. You know, so it was tough. So we could look at anybody and say, oh, well, you could have done better. No, that's not true. We can't live through somebody else's perspective. We're all doing the best we can with what's in us at any given moment, and that's always changing. And that's how you get to a place of non-judgment. We're all free to do this journey however we want to. It's not wrong, but it's often very different than how that person would see it and how that person would have done it and whatever. So when we recognize that, yeah, this person had a life and I loved him, and I can celebrate the fact that that happened. Why celebrate what I think happened, like he's dead and gone and blah? Why give attention to that when I can celebrate the time that we did spend together here and the fun that we had, and then wish him well, whatever he's up to now, and just honor that love and celebrate what was and what still is, actually, because you're right at that. When we're celebrating that and we're recognizing, I don't know, am I thinking of you because you thought of me first? Because he can do that. He's not even a he, right? So that soul is, of course, that's why we think of them, because they're thinking of us. They're directing their energy our way, but they're not going to come and burn a bush and say, here I am, please be happy. They're sending that thought all the time, but they're not going to interfere to that extent, because there's a process we have here, and we can be stubborn people, and your dad is stubborn. Right.
To say the least.
He's very lovable, but he's stubborn. And so, you know, we can lock ourselves into uncomfortableness, into lack of freedom, lack of all kinds of things, just because we think that's how it is. We'll say, well, this is my reality, see? And all of creation is saying, well, yeah, but, you know, you're free. You are allowed to think any way you want to. And it does make a difference. And we do have scientific proof now. We put electrodes on the brain. We do chemistry and hormone tests to see what is actually happening when people think in the unhappy lane and when people think in the happy lane. What's the difference? What's happening inside the body? And we see such difference in how the brain is firing and where the brain is firing and what's happening with the hormones and the chemistry of the body. We see it. It's provable, and it's been for a while now. So that's why I like to get the word out, because I follow what feels true to me, but I like the scientific proof too.
Well, I have a question about that too. When we were talking about the depression and the anxiety, so depression, because the one thing my dad says all the time, which also gets me going, is if I say, you know, I'm depressed, I'm working on depression, whatever I'm struggling with, however I say it, and he goes, "What do you have to be depressed about?" And oh, that just grinds my gears, because it's just like it's not like, oh, this one thing made me sad and now I'm sad. Like, it's just, you know, and if you're in therapy, and I have a therapist and a PCP and all these doctors, they tell you that the depression is a chemical imbalance in your brain. So it's not this thing that made you sad, but it's my brain is different. There's this, you know, maybe you need a pill to balance this out, or whatever. But supposedly, you know, depression, anxiety, is things. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain, and it's just my brain is different than your brain. So if depression is a chemical imbalance, is it really just easy to think of things in the happy lane and get over to the happy lane? Or is my brain different and maybe I need a medication or maybe I need something to give me the chemicals that, make me happier? Like, can it be both?
Well, my opinion, according to what I've learned, and of course I'm not a medical doctor, so I wouldn't tell anybody to take or not take a medication. But what I can tell you is, yes, we can prove that your brain, your structure, your stuff will change the more you think about depressing things. And again, it takes time. This doesn't happen right off the bat when you're born. So brains are different in that sense because you've stayed in that unhappy lane more. You've just paid attention to things. You've been taught things. You've been ingrained with ways of thinking that are against your true nature. And when that happens, yes, your body changes. But that doesn't mean you were meant to be like that or you came in born different and just wired to be depressed. We all have it in us to be at least good, gooder, goodest, and we vary. We wobble around in all this. And this is why we have to understand, too, with these two lanes, the undesirable lane is a welcome lane. We can't be looking at the things we don't like or we don't want or we think we didn't invite into our lives and calling them bad and woe is me, it happened to me, and what the hell. We have to be willing to say, where's the honey in this, though? I don't like it. I don't have to like it, and I'm certainly not staying here. But I am right in the middle of some stuff that I don't like. And that's why I tell people, if you're depressed, okay, be depressed. Say to yourself, okay, right now I'm depressed. I don't suffer from depression. Right now I'm depressed. There's relief in that. Because otherwise you're going, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, damn it. I shouldn't be. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm depressed. It's my brain. I can't help it. There's no power in that. That feels terrible. And it should, because it's not true. When something feels bad, source is not agreeing. So when you think, okay, I don't have a different brain because I'm just born that way. I have a different brain for now, maybe, because I've just been taught to stay in that unhappy lane a lot. And I've been taught that woe is me and shit happens. What are you going to do? And all of that stuff that so many people talk about and so many people give their attention to. No wonder we have so many people medicated. We start kids. We do it to kids. Right? So instead, and we're getting smarter about this because we're starting to introduce it into schools, mindfulness. We're finally starting to help the young ones just get in touch with themselves and just spend some minutes in calm. That way they're just bringing it home. And then go have your day. And then go take your test. And then go on the playground and watch how much less bullying happens. So it's great that and I hope we continue to do this more and more. And that's why people like me are getting the words out that we're ready to hear. Like, you don't have to suffer. And that's why that emotional guidance scale. And if anybody wants it, it's from go to abraham-hicks.com. You'll probably be able to find it on there. If not, let me know and I'll get you a copy of it. But this is straight from source. And this is where source or God tells us it's okay. If you're in maybe hatred or rage, those who guide us tell us we are not going to take you from hatred and rage to optimism in one jump. It's too big of a jump. You can't go from being really angry or hating to being, smiley faces and happy. Because we've all been there. We've all been very mad. And if somebody says, oh, come on, just celebrate your life. Think of the happy, get in that happy lane. You can't hear those words. You don't even want to look at that person. You can't do it right now. Because it's too big of a jump. But you have been there. You've been the person who says, just get in that other happy lane. You've been that person, but right now you're the mad person. You're the very angry person. So Source tells us we don't try to just throw you up into happy. We're smarter than that. When you're in complete rage, feeling like I just want to just beat the world up, gives you just a teeny bit of relief. Doesn't mean you go do that. But then you're like, okay, now I'm angry. I'm angry because things aren't going the way I want them to go. And then they're going to just sweetly bring you into maybe discouragement. Things aren't going the way I want them to go because life just happens. I don't have any choices. And then they'll take you into blame. Well, it's not working because it's my mother's fault, it's my father's fault, it's the school's fault, it's society's, it's the government's fault. You start blaming because that feels better than putting it on your shoulders. Now it's everybody else's fault. Now it's still not correct and it's still not happy, but you're getting there. So they'll take you into worry and then into doubt and maybe into just feeling overwhelmed, into frustration, into some pessimism, into some hopefulness, into some optimism, then some positive expectation. It just goes up from there. When anybody is maybe feeling worried, think to yourself, okay, I'm in that undesirable lane at the moment. I'm worrying. And actually worry is creating, this is what worry is. Worry is creating a reality that you don't want. That's all that is. So say I'm worried right now. This is probably a waste of my time. I'm probably creating something that I'm not going to like. Just saying that alone is giving you some relief because now you're starting to think, oh, that's right, I have control. I can worry right now, which is going to just put more energy into what I don't want, and I'm going to start getting some of that. Or I can take the real control that I have, and I can think a different thought. I can go into the what ifs. Well, what if? What's something that you worry about with maybe your son or your job or...
Yeah, I mean, everything. I feel like I worry a lot. Definitely my son. I feel like, having a kid is really having your heart live outside your body and to love someone so much. You want your kid to never have to cry or feel sad, or you just want absolute, joy and perfection for their life. So yeah, seeing, is everyone going to be nice to them at school today? And are they going to do well on their tests? Are they going to do, I feel like everything, my son, he's a big athlete and he loves sports, and wrestling season just ended for us. But, every time he had a match, it's just, is he going to be okay? Is he going to get hurt? You want him to win and you want him to be strong and you want him to be confident and, just everything. Yeah, I feel like I worry about every aspect of his life. I'm worried
So
about.
keep in mind, when you worry about him like that, you're not helping him. You're offering
Right.
the energy of worry. He feels it whether you say the words or not. And that takes away some of his confidence, self-value, and worth. And it's part of that conditioning. And so what if? What if I can look at my son the way Source looks at my son? What if it's really helpful that he falls down once in a while? What if every time he loses, it makes him a little smarter about it, a little more understanding of how he wants to win? What if I don't go rescue him all the time? Because I kind of figured out that Source isn't doing that for us either. Did you ever notice that when you're having a real bad day, that there are no angels or beings or whatever that appear around you and go, Tansy, we're just going to take this away for you? You have free will. You have free will. The guidance is there. But you have free will not to take it or listen to it or even believe it exists, which makes life hard. So why not have thoughts instead about what if Bryson does really well tonight? What if the ups and downs are the left lane, the right lane, the left lane, the right lane? That's helping him grow. It's helping him know himself better. It's helping him expand. We want both lanes. We just don't want to stay and return and return and return and return to the unhappy, the unwanted lane. But when we worry about people, we're assuming they're going to go in there, so we're kind of helping them go in there. We're helping them go in the unwanted lane, which isn't really helping them, right? It's an assistance to what we don't want.
Right.
Give this energy to your son. Think to yourself, I have every bit of confidence that he is as well guided as we all are. And that if I help him find ease, because I'm helping myself find ease, he's going to be able to navigate this life better. He won't kick up things that are going to be hurtful to him as often. He's going to have a smoother ride. But none of us came in here just to coast. We came in to get in here and get into the contrast. We have had experiences that we can look back on and go, oh, God, I can't believe I did that. But didn't that make us wiser? Didn't that make us more clear about how we want to
Yeah.
do things in a better way or in a nicer way or a way that feels better just to us? So this is how we learn compassion and unconditional love and trust. Because when we're doubting that things can go well, we're not trusting the God that we say loves us and is guiding us. If we truly trust creation, if we trust the intelligence that we call source or God, then why would we ever worry? What would there be to worry about? Because when you have that kind of trust, life is always working out for you. The potential for that is there.
Mm-hmm.
And that you have free will and you're calling the shots. So I say to myself, my life is what I say it is.
I love that.
And we've proven that in science too.
Yeah.
Right? So my life is what I say it is. So if my life is difficult, if my life is depressed, if it's anxious, yeah, it's because I keep saying it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say something else. I can tell a different story because literally the story that you tell all of creation by your thoughts and expectations is the life that you're going to have. And you want to always make it present tense, right?
Yeah.
So when you're saying he's doing well right now, I'm more positive right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a happier life. Even if it's just a little bit, teeny bit happier every day, I'm having a happier life. My life is more what I want it to be every day. This is getting more interesting to watch. So when you're saying things like that, you're feeling it with your heart, you're thinking it with your brain. So now you have brain-heart coherence working together. That has so much power in it. And the funny thing is, people are already doing that. It's nothing new. People were thinking and feeling things like fear and doubt and life isn't working out and the government's crap and this is, people are feeling it and thinking it. Do you know how much power is in that?
Right.
Even when it goes to the world at large, don't worry about this world and the people on the planet and the animals and anything else.
Well, and I feel like you said, just like the world as a whole, us as a society, us as people, I feel like we even get stuck. If you think about the narrative, like if I were to say, the first few things that come to mind are like the world is a scary place, like wait until you get out into that
Mm-hmm.
world and don't trust and don't and you think of all this stuff instead of the world is such a beautiful place. And
Mm-hmm.
sit and look at the snow today. I was looking out the window and there's just huge clumps of snow. And you're just standing there and it's just like, how beautiful is this? But instead,
Yeah.
it's like, go buy toilet paper. You're not going to be able to drive. The roads are bad. Instead of sitting there and being like, wow, this snow is so beautiful, and this can be a beautiful snow day, and maybe I can take my son out and we could do a snowball fight. It's scary, and it's oh no, that I've seen so many things of that dang groundhog told me spring was coming. What is this? This is horrible. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like people, the world's a scary place, and it's like, is it, or is the world a beautiful place? I would definitely, like you said, I feel like more people, we could get society to say the world is such a beautiful place instead of the world can be a scary place. I wonder where we could be.
Yeah, because we're taught, you just have to be careful. The world's a big place, bad things happen. And that variety is here. Whether you live it or not is your choice. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, look at the snow and think this crappy snow, or look at the snow and see the beauty in the snow. It's a conscious decision to live your life more in one lane than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the power to decide that. We're the only ones that can decide, and people are deciding that every day, whether they realize it or not.
Right.
So there is much more beauty on this planet. There's way more happiness, way more good stuff that's happening than the unwanted. But it's a personal decision where you want to focus and what you want to call reality. So like I said, it's a personal decision, and it's not wrong however we choose. If we choose to keep looking at the negative stuff or the unwanted stuff, we're free enough, that's okay. But why? Why do we do that to ourselves? Why would we want to look at things that are not going to help us? You have to be
Mm-hmm.
conscious enough to say to yourself, you know what, that's not helping me. That's not helping me, and it's not helping anybody else. How do I want it to be? Again, the world at large. How would you like this world to be? How would you like it to be? Think about that. Because now you're putting that energy out there, and that has power.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're thinking about how you don't want it to be, you're putting that out there, and that has power too.
That's another favorite analogy, and you'll say it a lot better than me. But that's something I recently changed in my life too. Is the flat tire.
Mm.
Um, and I didn't realize until you said that analogy to me, I didn't realize how negative I was being, just, like, not, like, even, like, realizing, because it was, yes, I got a flat tire, and then I called my friend Kayla, and I told her about this stupid flat tire, and I complained to her until she wouldn't hear it anymore, and then, you know what, I'm still angry about this, and now I'm gonna call my friend Julie, and I'm gonna tell her, "Can you believe that I have this flat tire?" And then I try to call Kayla, and she didn't really wanna hear it, and I'm gonna talk to her ear falls off, and then I'm gonna come inside, I'm gonna tell my dad about it, and, "Dad, I was out there, and I had a flat," and I retold this negative story of this flat tire 17 times,
Mm-hmm.
and you think that it's in a way you think it's gonna help, like, I just wanna vent, I just wanna talk about it because it's just so bad, I just wanna, but it's not helping, and now it's like, "Okay, I had a flat tire." Maybe I did send a picture like, "Huh, look what happened to me today," but I'm not calling. I used to be on the phone for hours and hours and hours,
Yep.
and I thought it was making me feel better, and now it's like, I refuse to do that anymore.
Good. Because we think dumping that pain and that discomfort onto our friends, it does. We do get a little relief from that, but it's a short-lived relief, and then we feel terrible, and now our friend feels terrible too. So for
Mhm,
anybody that hasn't heard that little story, it's just an example of how, if you get a flat tire, it's not logical for us to get out and look and go, oh, I have a flat tire, and take pictures of it, put it on Facebook, call people over to look at it, call people on the phone and tell them about your flat tire. You're going to complain about it. You're just going to stand there and talk about the flat tire and put it on social media. And the tire is not getting fixed. You can't look at the
mhm,
problem and get a solution. The solution is not in the same space or energy as the problem. So what do? We get out, we see a flat tire. We either call somebody that can help us fix it, we fix it ourselves, we fix a flat, we call AAA, we start walking if we have no other alternative. We do something
mhm,
to remedy that situation. So why don't we do that with everything else in life? Here's something I noticed a long time ago. I would see something, I don't know, maybe somebody pulled out in an intersection, just zoomed through the intersection. It could have killed a lot of people, but luckily it didn't, that kind of thing. So I find that I would think how I was going to tell that to people before I even started telling it. Like,
uh-huh.
like,
Oh,
look at
yeah.
that just happened. And then you find yourself telling the story of how that happened because
Yup,
you're going to start telling people that. I can't wait to get home and tell so-and-so about it, and I'm
mhm,
going to tell so-and-so. And all you did was take one moment that didn't hurt anybody, even if it did, even if there was an accident involved. You took one moment and you kept regurgitating it back into your life, back into your energy, back into what's coming to you. Because even though it's not
mhm,
related to you, you're still in the energy of bad things that happen.
mhm,
For years now, I've said to my kids or anybody when they go to leave to go to work or have fun, bye, have fun. And it was maybe about 10 or 11 years ago where I realized that other people say, bye, be careful. All right, I'll see you later, be careful.
mhm,
And I mentioned that to somebody, and he said, well, there's a lot that can happen out there. I want my kids to be safe, so I tell them to be careful. And I said, but you're
mhm,
setting them up for danger. You're programming
mhm,
them to think that bad things happen and you must be careful because it can happen to you too. Instead of just saying, hey, have a happy day. And then they bebop along and have a happy day. Or not, depending on what they're thinking and what they're attracted. But at least it gives them that a little bit of programming that's in a positive light versus look out, the other shoe's going to drop.
wow, I love that.
What if there's not another shoe that drops? Because that's what happens when you're in the energy of life working out for you. When you can repeat to yourself, life is always working out for me. There's honey in everything, even if I don't like it. If I'm willing to look for it, there's honey in everything. When we're willing to say things like that, we get curious about how could this be better? I bet you this could be better. And then you start thinking of ways that it could be better, which means that's the energy you're putting out to all of the attractive forces of the universe. And you're going to get some versions of that back. You're going to get some essence of that back into your life. And life just seems to get easier because it is easier. And then what happens sometimes is people will have a bad moment and go, oh, well, the hell with that, it doesn't work anyway. See, I just had a bad thing. Bad things shouldn't be happening because life's supposed to be working out for me. So instead of saying, I don't know, maybe this is life working out for me too.
Mhm,
maybe I'm not off track. Maybe this is just something that has some honey in it. I'm just going to be open and maybe see it. So I guarantee all of you out there that if you just find the ease as often as you can with yourself, with your people, with your situations, I'm just going to be easy about this. There's honey in everything. Life is working out well for me now. If you're willing to say things like that to yourself and repeat them and repeat them and repeat them, they show up. These things show up. Life shows up that way for you.
I saw a really great TikTok not too long ago, and it reminds me, because you say that, and I definitely try to say that to myself all the time. Life is always working out for me. Like, look at this, it's always working out. And I saw this TikTok, and it kind of went with that of, I forget exactly how it was phrased, but it was like, you are undefeated in the things that life has thrown at you. You have won every battle. Anything that you thought you weren't going to get over, look at you, you're here. When next time you're sitting there like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do to get through this, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this, think to yourself, you always have. You'll see undefeated, and what an accomplishment that is, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it helps too to think I'm not doing this life alone. This is a co-creative process. I'm co-creating my world, my life, my personal situations with God, source, infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it, and everyone else, because everything is so well synchronized. So it's just, it makes a difference between, do we want to have a sad, anxious, worry-filled life? Because we can, and that's okay. Nobody's in any trouble for that. This is because we're talking about unconditional love from source. Or we're just as free to decide on purpose that I want to think on purpose. And that life can work out better for me. I just didn't know that. So now that I know it, what do I want to think about? Where do I want to give my attention? How many depressed discussions do I want to get into? How many sad movies do I want to watch? How many people do I want to listen to say, oh, that's a tragedy, or that person died, that's terrible? When a soul comes in, has a life, and leaves that life. That's the way it works here. Well, I think we could go on all day, Tans. I love talking to you, so we should do this again.
I know, right? Totally. Yeah.
So before we sign off, I think it would do the world good if we give a shout out to the man who brought you into this physical life, who loves you unconditionally, and has nearly made August 18th a national holiday. That's his birthday for anybody out there that might not know that. Yeah. There probably aren't many of you.
Yeah, what a great person he is. And a shout out to him because he was very excited for us to do this together. So totally.
You demand, George Brucker.
All right. Thank you. That was awesome.
So lots of love to all of you out there, because isn't fun the best thing to have? This has been fun for me and Tansy today. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can find me at mysticaltruths.com.